now you are going to set up an option to activate the second factor authentication or the multi-factor authentication. To do that, you have to check two things. The first thing, the user should not be enrolled to the multi-factor authentication. And the second thing, we are going to verify if the current user has an email verified. To do that, we are going to get a user here. What we are going to do is to come here and to take the current user. Let me do that here, current user, and it will be current user. Okay, and get back to our page. What you are going to do is to create a props type. We'll call it props. Inside this props, we'll call it current user, and the type will be user. This user is coming from Firebase. This is user component, call it user component just to avoid user is coming from Firebase. And inside our user component, what we are going to do is we're going to get our props and is current user. What we are going to do now is to verify if the current user have an email verified. And the second thing, what you are going to do is to verify if the user is not enrolled. So let's create a new function inside our authentication that verify if the user is enrolled or not. To do that, go to our authentication, and we are going to create a new function. We are going to export our function, and we call it verify if user is enrolled. All right, so what you are getting a user. Okay, and here what you are going to check, you are going to verify if enrolled factor. Okay, we are creating a function. Enrolled factor is going to be, we are going to call a multi-factor. Say that multi-factor is coming from Firebase authentication. We'll pass the user and we will get the enrolled factor, and we will return the enrolled factor if its length is superior than 0, our user is enrolled. So what you are going to do now, you are going to get back here and to verify if the user is not enrolled. In our case is current user. Okay, we are going to redirect the user to the page to allow the user to create the second factor authentication. Let's do that. So I've created a link to a page. I will call it MFA, so I can say multi-factor authentication, so I can redirect my user there and he can create his second factor authentication. To do that, let me create a new page, call it multi-factor authentication, and inside this I will call default multi-factor authentication page. It's a function. Okay, what I will return for the moment, I will just return a div. Instead of the div I will say okay, MFA. Let's get back here. Everything is okay. Here I've changed the name. Let me just change that to user component. And here is user component. And here is the current user. Let me write it properly. Current user. Now everything should be okay. Okay, say that it can be no. So okay, here I have to change my props because this type can be no. Okay, and what I have to do is to check if the current user exists, and we are ready to go. Okay, now check if everything is okay. Everything now is okay. Cool. Let's just test that on our navigator if the user is able to see the multi-factor page. Let me log in again. Something went wrong. Oh, I made a mistake here. Where the error occur in the login page. The error is here, so let's change that. So we are going to connect to our account. Let's connect to our account. And now we can see activate the multi-factor authentication. When I click on that, I can see my page. Good. Let's now build this page, multi-factor authentication, in our application. So to create this page, what you are going to do, we are going first to verify if the users coming to this page is connected. To do that, we are going again to get the current user, use current user, and we are going also to use the router provided by Nextjs. Okay, and we are going to verify if the state of the current user is loading. In this case, we are going to return the loading, and if there is no user, we have to redirect the user to the loading page, the login page. Let's do that. What you are going to do is to void the return type of the router, and we will push to the login page. Okay, great. After that, we are going to create a component. That component, we will call it create multi-factor authentication. What we are going to do now is to create that multi-factor authentication. Let's do that. We're going into our component and create a new component. We'll call it create multi-factor authentication. Right, and it will be a function create multi-factor authentication. We are going to pass him the current user. As I said, we have to pass him the current user. What you are going to do is to create a new type, data props, we call it props, and inside we'll create current user, and can be user from authentication. Okay, and what we are going to do here, we are going to get our current user props and can get our current user. For the moment, let me just create a div and say component created. What we are going to do here, we are going to do two things. To create a second factor authentication, we should verify the user with our recaptcha. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a custom hook that will generate our recaptcha into this page. Let's create this hook right now. We will call this hook use recaptcha. Okay. Inside this hook, we are going to use a function and we call it use recaptcha, and we will set up the component ID. Okay, and we understand why. Component ID, the name of the component ID will be a string, and inside of this component ID, what you are going to do, component ID. Inside of our component ID, what we are going to do, we are going to set our recaptcha, set recaptcha use state. We are going to use a state, and the type of this recaptcha will be application verifier from Firebase Authentication. Okay, so inside of our use effect, we are going to create a function. Inside this function, we are going to create a variable. We'll call it recaptcha verifier, and inside this we'll create a recaptcha verifier from Firebase auth, and we'll call the component ID, and we'll pass some parameter. The first parameter, it will be the size. In our case, it will be, we will use invisible, and after that we use a callback, and inside of our callback we'll call nothing, and here we are going to call our auth. It will come from authentication, so everything is correct now. And what we are going to do after that, we can now set the recaptcha verifier. When this use custom hook is unmounted, we have to clear this recaptcha. So return the cleanup function. Instead of the cleanup function, we will call recaptcha verifier that clear. Right. Okay. And here, what we are going to do is to put in our array dependency. We put component ID. We are going to return this recaptcha. Okay, let's now use this recaptcha in our create multi-factor authentication component. Before everything else, we have now to create this page. To create the multi-factor authentication, the first thing, the user should be able to provide his phone number, and the second thing, he should provide the code he will receive via his phone number. Now let's create the phone registration component, and we are going to create also the code sign up component. But before that, let us create our recaptcha, the recaptcha of this page. Recaptcha use recaptcha, and we are going to use sign up. sign up will be just the name of a div we will create here. Okay, let's do that. We'll create a div and its ID will be sign up. Let's just copy paste to be sure that we have written that well. Cool. And as I said, we have to verify, we have to create two components, phone registration and code sign up. Let's do that. I will create first phone registration. Okay, it will be a function. No, it will be phone registration. Okay, I will return a page I will build. Let's build that page. So we have created phone registration component. Let's call it into our create multi-factor authentication. Phone registration, and let's have a look on our navigator. Load the page. What's going on here? Just have a look. Oh, okay. We can now call our components create multi-factor authentication, and we can pass it current user. And yeah, it can be no, and in this case we have to say no. Okay, now we can see we have a different page, and we can provide a phone number, and to verify this phone number, or the user can cancel and to get back to our user page. Let's implement that. What you have to do is go to phone registration, getting an instance of a router, okay, and when the users click on cancel, on click, the user should be able to get back router that push, get back to the user page. Okay, let's test that. If I click on cancel, I can get back to my user page. When I click on activate the multi-factor authentication, I can see this page. Okay, right. What you have to do next? Find his phone number and to send him the code. Let's implement the function will help us to do that. I will lift my state into the parent component. So the parent component here is the create multi-factor authentication, and I'm going to build a function. What I'm going to do is to create first a ref. I will show you how I will do that. I will call it phone number, and here I'll use a ref. Okay, and to be a no default value, and it's HTML input element. Okay, and I have now to bind the reference here, and I will call it phone number. Once I get this information here, what I have to do, I have to use another function. I will call it function, I will call it handle click. If the phone number that's current, if the phone number is not null, the current information is not null, I will create a function. I will call this function phone number, get phone number. Okay, and I will pass that what the user, the value of the phone number. Okay, what I have to do is to create a props type. I will call it props, and I will use get phone number here. It will get a phone number that is a string and return a void. Okay, and here I can call that props, and it's get phone number. I have to use this get phone number in my create multi-factor authentication. I have to create a function. I will call it get phone number. Okay, it will get a phone number, and I will pass that here. Get phone number, get phone number. Okay, I will now bind this information with the send here, this function. On click here, I will use handle click. Right. Okay. Now we have to create in our authentication file the method that will help us to verify the phone number. To verify the phone number, as I said, I have to create a new function. Here I will call it, I will export a function. I will call it verify phone number. And what I will pass in this function, I will give user information to be a user, should be a user for Firebase authentication. What I will provide next, it will be the phone number and the recaptcha verifier. Okay, and the type is application verifier. The phone number will be the string. So what you are going to do here, we are going to get a session. So create a variable, we'll call it multifactor session, and we are going to await. So to use our await, we have to use an async there, and we can await here to multifactor, and we'll pass it to the user and we'll get the session. Okay, and after that we are going to create a phone info option. So let's create a phone info option. What we'll put inside, we'll put a phone number, and our session, it will be, I can just call it here, I can call it, it will be multifactor session. Okay, yes, I can call it session here, it will become more simple. Okay, session. What we are going to do next, we are going now to create the phone of provider. To do that, we have to create phone of provider, and here we are going to create a new phone of provider, and we are going to pass our authentication and say our try catch. We are going to return the response if everything went well. We are returning a phone of provider. We can verify the phone number. What we're going to pass is the phone option and the recaptcha verifier. Otherwise, what you are going to do is to catch the error, and inside we can return false. Okay, The verified phone number is returning us a promise of a string. So here the type will be promise of false or string. Cool. Let's now use that inside our create multi-factor authentication component. What we are going to do here, we are going to do this. We are going to verify if the current user is null and or the recaptcha is null, will do nothing. Okay. Otherwise, we are going to get the verification ID that is getting a string from a wait that will be an async function, because verified phone number is an async function. This will be also async await verify phone number. Okay, here what we have to pass, we pass the current user. We are going also to pass the phone number we have get, and we are going to pass our recaptcha. All right. If our verification ID is false, we can notify to the user that something went wrong. Else, we need this verification ID to send to the user a code. So we'll create a state here, code ID, set verification code ID, and it will be a state. That state will be null by default, so it can be, let me do that, it can be string or null. Right, so if everything is correct here, we are going to set our verification code ID to pass it verification ID. Okay, what are we going to do? If the verification ID is null, we are going to display the phone registration. But if the verification ID is set, we are going now to display the code sign up component. Let me first do this. If the verification code ID does not exist, I can put my phone registration. Otherwise, if I have a verification code ID here, I will display another component. Let's first create that component. We'll call it code sign up. Okay, we are going to export our function and the name will be code sign up. Now we are going to build a component that will help us to retrieve code. Let's do that, and we'll call it code. We're going to create a new component. We'll call it code, and inside of our code, we'll create a prop, so we call it code. And here what we are going to do, we are creating a new type. We call it props. Instead of this type, we'll call code get code. It will be a function that's getting a code as a string and return void. So what you are going to do here, we are going to set up our component. Let's do that. So what I do here, on creating this component, I've just created a component that will help me to display some information. Let me show you that on the navigator. So I will get back here to explain you what I've done here. Let's just check that and we'll call code sign up. And code sign up. Instead of my code sign up, I will return code. Yeah. So here I will create a function. No, I'll create a function. I will call it get code with the code that is a string, and here I will put get code. Okay, here I can use code sign up. What I did here, I've just created a page, a component that will help me to get information from the user. When the user will get a code via his phone number, he can use that here inside. So what I have to do, I can refuse to provide that code, and if I cancel the operation, I have to put on click message, on click event. I have to avoid the router push. It should get back to the user page. All right, but otherwise what you have to do, I should execute here a function. I will call it handle click. Let's create this function. I will call it handle click. Inside that function, I will get the code. I will call it final code. As the code is an array, what I have to do is to use reduce function. And here, what I have to do is to get the previous value and the current value. And inside, what I have to do is to return the previous value, and I will concatenate that with the current value. And what I have to do here, I have to execute now get code, and I will get the final code that is a string. Okay, we are getting back here, and we need two information. The first information we need here, we need the current user. Okay, we use the current user and the verification ID, verification code ID. It will be the verification code ID. Okay, let's create these two props. I will create a new type. I will call it again props, and I will use this information. Okay, let me just put that correctly. Here it will be a user for Firebase off, and here it will be a string. Okay, here we are going to pass these two props. Okay, and current user and verification code ID. All right, so we can continue our implementation. Now we are going to implement this function get code. Inside of the get code, what you are going to do, we are going to check our code. First things we have to do is to enroll the user. If the user provides a correct code, now the user will be able to be enrolled to the second factor authentication. let's create an async function. We export an async function. We'll call it enroll user, and it will take user as a parameter, the verification code ID, it will be a string, a verification code, that also will be a string. And what we are going to do next, we are going to get the phone of credential. And here, what you are going to do, we are going to use a phone of provider and get the credential. Going to get the verification code ID and the verification code. After that, we have to create we get an assertion. It will be a phone multi-factor generator here, and the assertion will be the phone of credential. And we are going to execute this, going to await for multi-factor. We are going to pass the user, and we are going to enroll the user. We are going to use multi-factor assertion, and we are going to use a display name. In our case, we are going to call that personal phone number. And if everything went well, we're going to return true. Otherwise, we have to catch the error, and we are going to return false. So we have now to use this function, enroll the user, to inside of, let me first close this, and this. Going to go to sign up. This function, we can say that it will be an async function, and we can get a response. Inside this response, we're going to execute a enroll user, and we are going to pass the current user, the verification code ID, and the code. Right. So if the second factor authentication is set, the user can be redirected to the user page. To do that, we have to check if the response is true, and we can do that. To do that again, we have to get an instance of a router, use router from Nextjs router, and await for router that push user page. If the operation failed, we have to notify the user that something went wrong. Okay, so in our case, create multi-factor authentication is set. Let's now test this function. Let me provide my phone number. Correct. I will provide my phone number. Okay. Now I will receive a code. I have received a code. Let me provide that.